everybody. Welcome to the EvoSec podcast. This is Aaron Davis, along with my twin brother, Eric Davis. We are the Tactical Twins. How you doing, brother?
Man, doing wonderful. Man, it's going to be a good show. We're excited about it.
Oh, yeah. We are excited to have another show where we're going to have a deep dive into shooting. It's been a little bit, so we couldn't think of anyone better right now than to have Tim Herron on, who is a multidisciplinary competitor. He is a USPSA Grand Master and an IDPA Master. He's got dozens of titles, state, regional, and high competition at nationals. And, the problem is that he's made the rest of us feel inadequate because he's been shooting half as long as the rest of us. So with that said, Tim, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it, you guys, for having me on.
Well, it's Eric's been telling me about you for a while, and we'll talk about when you guys met up later in the show. But I've been excited to have you on for a while, so we're glad to finally do it. Now, for audience members, let's go ahead and give them some information on where you're from and what you're up to these days, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So, of course, I'm Tim Herron, owner and of course, I only lead instructor of Tim Herron Shooting LLC. I've been in business full-time as a full-time national level trainer since I want to say about mid 2018, when I was very, very fortunate and blessed to be able to walk away from a 23-year career as an automotive technician in the automotive field. To
Cool.
Teaching full time. So I've been shooting since 2010, where I then very quickly found USPSA within that same year. I started shooting in February of 2010, and it was about July when I kind of found competitive shooting, and that kind of took over. That kind of took over any other hobbies and any life outside of like gunplay that that I'd had before. But yeah, no, I've been teaching, like I said, full time on the kind of the traveling national level since about 2018. So this is like year number 4, solid year number 4, or mid. I guess you could say kind of full time year number 5 for me. And I think this year I've got 42 or 43 class dates. Most of my classes are 2 days long. And those 42 to 43 class dates also include like multiple classes within those dates as well. So getting to travel all over the country. I just got back from California 2 days ago, headed to Des Moines, Iowa this weekend. From Des Moines, Iowa, I'll spend a week in Michigan next week. So yeah, I mean, I get to go all over the place, and it's great, kind of share the gospel of how to shoot better with pistols. So
I love that. Share the gospel of shooting better. That's cool.
That's awesome. We gotta steal that with attribution for sure. Well, very, very cool, Tim. Well, man, it's finally great to have you on the show. For the audience members out there, I first ran into Tim at the Range Master Instructor Development Certification course in Casa Grande, Arizona, where again, just as a mentioning that Tim is all about learning.
Mhm.
He's a full-time instructor already, comes to another class to get his learn on, and really it's impressive when folks that we admire and look up to continue to train, and that's not surprising, Tim, but it was definitely a blessing running into you there. But I've told this story on the air a couple of times, and you may recall me telling you this, that for the audience out there, Tim was one of my fellow coaches. And for those that don't know how the Range Master classes work, is when you're not shooting, you're coaching. So every relay 1 is shooting, relay 2 is coaching relay 1, and vice versa. So that again, the whole aspect, or excuse me, the whole intention is that you're learning how to coach better. But you may recall, Tim, I told you, it's like, Tim, you're not giving me much opportunity to learn how to coach better. You're doing everything so damn good. I got nothing to offer. Do you remember me saying that to
I
you?
do remember that. Yeah.
Hey, buddy, can you tuck your shirt in a little better there? I'm concerned about you. I'm just trying to think of something goofy to say.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. We need to make sure that's not getting caught in your holster there, Tim.
yeah, be
Of course,
careful
that
of
was.
that, buddy.
Yeah, it was awesome meeting you there, Tim. And speaking of shooting, I guess coming from, Aaron mentioned multidisciplinary. That's where we kind of live, and in martial arts and spreading so many training modalities.
Hmm.
One of the things that impressed me is I saw how you started shooting in 2010. You kind of hit a plateau in 2012,
Hmm.
and then you got some instruction from some mentors, which I'd like to talk about here in a second. But then you made GM another 2 years later in 2014. Man, to me, it sounds fast. But I guess the point is that if you're not like us, where you're spreading all of these disciplines out amongst multiple things you're trying to excel at,
Right.
I guess that's probably what you did. Can you talk about that and how you managed to make GM so quickly?
Sure. So I mean that yeah, like I said, I picked up USPSA, very early in my shooting. So in about, like I said, July of 2010, I'd started going to local matches. I was very very fortunate in my my very early start to have befriended a gentleman by the name of John Sandlin, who was kind of like my very first mentor. So John was at the time was like a high level A class USPSA competitor, and I had met him at the indoor range that I was shooting at all the time. Just getting better in my own shooting, and I'd always thought it would be really really cool if there was like a sport that had you like drawing from the holster, had you shooting multiple targets, that was like timed, like because I came from a racing background. So I'd spent 13 years doing solo SCCA Sports Car Club racing, both in like time trial stuff, track days, as well as primarily autocross. Um, and so like I loved competition. I loved, like what competition breeds in people. And so when I found John, and John was like, he kind of took me under his wing and was like, "Hey man, let me take you out. We'll shoot at an outdoor range. I'll, kind of give you the range commands and kind of, kind of lead you down that path a little bit. So it's like somebody kind of giving you your first introduction, like to getting on the mats the first time, like in jujitsu, or to take you to the range for the very first time just to teach you how to shoot, period. Right. And so it wasn't very long. I found USPSA and I was like, man, I've got to have more of this. I got to have all of this. And very, very quickly, I kind of realized that my race car that I'd had for about the last 4 or 5 years had just kind of sat in the garage doing nothing. Um, Tools and things that I was using for doing race car stuff at home turned into getting the benches cleared to put, a Dillon 550 reloader. And I started making my own ammo, and I just like I was shooting more and doing everything else less and less. Um, so when I very first started, like my very first match that I went to was a USPSA classifier match. So in that classifier match, there was 6 stages that were all classifier stages, and I classified kind of right out of the gate, kind of like a high D, low C class. And I was like, okay, at least I don't know what classifiers are at this point. I'm too new to this and too green, but I guess that tells me what my level of skill is. And I watched other shooters, just absolutely burn particular things down. I was like, I want to be to that level. And that just kind of started the entire journey for me. Very quickly though, my skill set improved so well, so quickly that I made B class within about 4 or 5 months. And then I kind of stayed at that, like that perpetual B class shooter, which a lot of folks also, they kind of fall into that same hole themselves for a couple of years. And it wasn't until I sought out some instruction with who now has been one of my ultimate mentors, both as a student, of the sport of shooting, as well as one of my strongest mentors as far as just as an instructor as well, was Michael Seeklander.
Mm.
Mike Seeklander was, I saw him competing on Top Shot. I kind of knew who he was, just through in the shooting community. Knew he did a lot of IDPA and USPSA and things. And then, of course, where I'm originally from was Kansas City, Missouri, and he was the director of training at uh, U.S. Shooting Academy down in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Hmm.
And so I was like, well, Tulsa's only like 3.5, 4 hours away from me. I'm going to go drive down there and I'm going to take his 3-day like competition 101 class. And so actually the guy that was kind of my early mentor, John Sandlin, was like, you know what? I think it'd be a great idea for both of us to go do it. So like most guys is like shooting mentors are like, I've taught you all I can teach you, be free, young chick, and go do your own thing, kind of deal. And instead, like John saw it as an opportunity to be able to get some good training with me. And we took the class together. And man, Mike Seeklander kind of changed a few things about it, about how I pursued shooting, not necessarily from a skill set basis, or a technique base, but the biggest thing that I learned from Mike was like how to practice with a purpose. And I think that's for a lot of people. They think, oh, I'm going to go to the range with 500 rounds of ammo and I'm going to do all the shooting. I'm going to practice all the things. And unfortunately, that is a terrible way of trying to pursue your shooting to find gains. Like I said, it's like I tell students all the time, it's like going to the gym, to like you go do that New Year's resolution where I'm going to go lose 30 pounds and I'm going to put on 10 pounds of muscle and I'm going to start this on January 1. And you go to the gym, but you've got no direction, right? No purpose. So you go to the gym and you see all of this workout and exercise equipment and you see people doing a multitude of different things and you are absolutely lost. So you're like, well, I guess I'll do a little bit of that and I'll do a little bit of this and I'll do a little bit of that and I'll see what happens. And 2 to 3 months in, you just lose focus because you never really had focus. You had no purpose and you lose interest in it and you back out. And that's exactly what I see for a lot of folks that want to pursue shooting and getting better at shooting is they just don't have the focus to kind of regiment their practice to pursue things like with a purpose. And that's what I really got from Mike Seeklander more than anything else was like how to practice with a purpose, how to regiment my training, how to stay focused in the training and realizing that going to the range with an ammo can of 500 rounds or 1,000 rounds of ammo just doesn't get it done. So, learning that I can be really focused and regimented with 200 rounds of practice, 200 rounds of ammo, and stay practiced on 2 to 3 drills or exercises, to work on one particular skill set, and that's going to make way more difference than trying to like collectively touch on 15 or 20 different things, because basically all you've done now is you've turned all your ammo into just noise. And like I said, there's no reason to what you're doing. You're just plinking, and nobody gets better from plinking. They get better from like a directive and then following that directive. So, changing the way I practiced was like the biggest takeaway I got from Mike. And then immediately going back home and like really having a focus to get better in my own practice was that was the game changer for me. And it wasn't I took that class in 2012 and then like really implemented the things I learned from both him. Rob Latham was another kind of early mentor as well. And a few other people in between there too. I gotten an opportunity to kind of befriend with and train with Ben Steger, who's a multiple time national champion as well. And guys like in my own local range that were high level competitors as well. Matt Hopkins, Jared Fox, and a few others that I'd worked with one-on-one, as well as like became kind of my training buddies. And so about a year and a half later, I was able to kind of just focus on my journey as a shooter and made the classification of master. And it wasn't like I kind of let go of like that kind of chasing after a classification or chasing after a particular goal to just focusing on my journey. And about 3 months later, 4 months later, after I made master, the beginning of 2014, I achieved the level of Grand Master as a pistol shooter in USPSA. And then within like 3 or 4 months, achieved my second Grand Master designation in a different division. And then about 7 or 8 months after that, made Grandmaster in yet another division, all kind of within the same platform or same pistol that I'd been competing with. And then I thought I had things figured out and realized real quick, it's like becoming like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. You realize like, oh, now the journey's just begun. Now
Mm-hmm.
kind of throw away all of those preconceived notions of what the belt or what the classification or what those designations mean, and just get to focus on being a better shooter, and realized that I'm more of a student now than I ever was trying to attain those classification designations before, and kind of freed my mind to just allow the learning to really happen. So, and that's kind of where I'm at now, you know.
Well, Tim, that's an awesome explanation and very enlightening for both my brother and I, and no doubt for our audience. So I'll say a couple of things based on that. Is number one, Mike Seeklander, as you know, Aaron and I have not taken any of his classes as of yet, but he's been a huge mentor of us from afar on multiple things, and part of that is honestly this show as well, in working with him and Rich. But Mike, I mean, it certainly piqued my interest when you spoke about the purposeful practice. And so I'm going to ask a technical question. During that period of time, what was your typical dry fire practice? Or and just, well, let's just put it this way, because I'd like to talk more about practice further in the show. But how many times a week did you dry fire, and how many times a week did you live fire during that process from 2012 to 14 when you made GM?
So a lot of it was just like I felt like I was practicing live fire and dry fire about the same as far as
Mm.
intensity, but with very little direction prior to that. It wasn't until, like I said, like really kind of receiving the information I needed, like Mike kind of laid out the blueprints, right? So now I've got the blueprints on how to build Tim Herron as a better shooter, right? So learning then like how to direct my attention to just like working on particular skill sets in isolation, and fully immersing myself in like that one particular skill set or that one particular exercise, or directive for, you know, 10 to 15 to 20 minutes. And it was much better to direct myself that way for 10 to 20 minutes than it was where I was in the past, where I'd be like, man, I'm going to do a dry fire session and I'm going to hit everything. I'm going to work on my draw. I'm going to work on my reloads. I'm going to work on transitions and movement and everything underneath the sun. And I'm going to work on it solidly for an entire hour. But what you don't realize when you're trying to do these marathon training sessions like that is that about 20 to 30 minutes in, your brain stops learning anything, and it just becomes then just kind of going through the motions. And a lot of times we end up frustrating ourselves because our skill set ends up declining and not progressing. So then we end up spending 30 to 40 extra minutes of time just trying to not digress, but instead trying to progress, right? So it's like, I'm flubbing these reloads all the time, or oh man, my hand's now not hitting the same spot on the holster every single time. And instead of myelinating in the good stuff, we end up myelinating in the bad, trying to correct the bad with the good. So it was like I'd have been better, like Mike was the one who kind of opened my mind to like, you'd be better to spend 20 minutes focusing on 2 to 3 really solid things that you're going to work on in your dry fire. And those things only, like 15 to 20 minutes, or 10 to 15 minutes a piece on 2 things for 20 to 30 minutes, than to work on an hour and work 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes on this, 10 minutes on that, and then being frustrated that you're just not making the gains. And that's simply because you're just not focused. So my dry fire regimen just just changed a lot. Instead of working on everything all at the same time or trying to work on multitudes of things, I focused on isolation of the draw, isolation of the reload, isolation of the trigger press, isolation of the grip. Everything had its purpose and everything was going to get its practice purposefully in that one particular isolation of a skill for anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And I would work on just 2 to 3 things that particular day. But those 2 to 3 things were also related to each other, right? It pays no dividends at all to be like, okay, I'm going to run around the house focusing on like shooting on the move like a chicken with my head cut off for 15 or 20 minutes. And then, oh, okay, now that I've been doing all of this craziness with the gun, let me now go ahead and focus on like mitigating any movement with the gun with a good grip, and then just gently pressing the trigger and focusing on just trigger control. Well, after I've been violently pressing the trigger and moving the gun around, like that, you see where now there's a loss of direction on what it is you're doing, right? So it's like I want to be aggressive when I need to be aggressive, and then I want to focus on good control aspects of my shooting and other aspects too. So it's not a like dry fire shouldn't be laid out like, okay, my book is 350 pages thick and I have to cover every page in great detail in an hour's time. Like make your practice book. Okay, I'm going to open up these 2 to 3 pages and I'm going to be so hard focused on these 2 to 3 things that I'm working on for this 20-minute session that before I physically get, before I physically start to get tired, I'm mentally going to get tired first, and then when I start to mentally get, I don't want to say frustrated, but like mentally fatigued, then it's time to kind of turn it off. Like learning has occurred. Learning is now finished occurring. Now it's time to like go do something else and kind of reflect on the dry fire time.
Nice. You just said something I think is crucial, is that you go and reflect on it after your dry fire practice, right?
Sure. Because that's a lot of times, I mean, that reflection process needs to happen to know like, why did I get frustrated on like when I was working on, let's say, draws to first shot, or why did I get frustrated not even being able to like be able to clear my shirt every single time? Was I focused on the wrong aspect of it? Was I focusing on speed, or was I focusing too much on trying to just get my strong hand grip on the gun? Was I focused on just trying to get the gun ripped out of the holster that I wasn't getting the, whatever the case may be, whatever the skill set is you're working on, if you're not spending at least 5 to 10 minutes kind of in reflection to kind of to realize what the hell it is you're doing and how it is you're trying to correct it, now you're just going through the motions. And if you're just going through the motions, like welcome to frustration, pal. I don't know what else to tell you. There's a lot of this that's not just myelination, as Mike Seeklander talks about all the time, myelination of a particular skill set, like building those neural pathways. A lot of times those neural pathways are also built on the reflection after the fact, right?
Well, it's just like we talk a lot about on this show about the importance of visualization for development of skills, and that it does contribute to myelination.
Sure.
And I mean the reflection of that practice is one and the same. And so yeah, this is really really good tips for sure, Tim. And I think our audience is gonna develop a lot afterwards if they heed to what you're saying. And I'll just kind of say one of my other thoughts that you broke a thought, and then I'll pass it on to Aaron for his next question. But it's that it sounds like you're saying minimize conflict of interest within your skill development, even though a lot of them are related. Make sure that you're not having something like you just said. You're running and gunning and running a trigger hard, like you're doing quick and fast stages, maybe closer targets, versus when you really need to get into the control to make those 25-yard shots under accuracy, right?
Right. Well, and the thing is too, right? If you're trying to blend too much together all at one time in your own practice, then the problem is whatever you might have thought you wanted to be focused on, then takes a back seat to whatever you're trying to address that might be the mistake you're making somewhere else along the way, right? So in pursuit of goal A, we've now found a problem down here that now becomes goal B, but goal B now becomes the priority. So there ends up being a priority shift. And next thing you know, you've spent 35 minutes working on draw to first shot, but your actual goal that you wanted to go to the range and live fire and focus on was, maybe it was group shooting or shot calling, or maybe it was, man, I wanted to really focus on the reload, but I tried to blend my draws in with it to do like draw two, reload two. And now you're chasing a different rabbit down a different hole. And it's like, that is not conducive to being able to fix what it is or address what it is you're trying to address. So,
Well, Aaron, I'll pass it to you, but I'll just add one other thing to that. I'm going to benefit greatly from what you're espousing to us right now, because I mean, Aaron and I know we've been exposed to a lot of this, but your explanation is so more concise of the way that we kind of need to hear it, that it makes me, because I've kind of devolved into, at least recently, where I am trying to cover most of my skills in a dry fire session and a shooting session. But this last week, Aaron and I took the Range Master Advanced Instructor class. And I think Aaron and I, and he can comment on this later as well, we obviously realize some of the stuff we really need to focus on. And lo and behold, Aaron and I said this last week. It's like, hey, we're going to just focus on those things. And it's kind of what you're saying, but you're really making us think how much we really need to double down on that nearly full time.
Well, here's the
what
thing.
we're doing.
Here's the big thing, right? So if you're going to the range and you're like, man, I want to touch on a little bit of everything, you've got to understand and know what it is you're seeking from either that live fire range session or that dry fire range session, right? So if my dry fire becomes like, man, I'm going to work on a little bit of everything. Are you in learning mode or are you in validation mode, right? Are you validating a skill set you already presumably own, or are you in a mode like in your mind, like, or in your skill set where it's like, okay, I'm in learning mode. So now I'm going to evaluate the skill I already have, and I'm going to make changes to that skill to try to to myelinate a new pathway or to figure something else out, And so that, like, are you in learning mode or are you in validation mode? And I think a lot of people, they go to the range with the best interest at heart to be like, I'm going to be in learning mode and I'm going to figure some things out. But instead, they don't want to do the things that they don't like doing because they're hard and they're not fun. It's not fun to go to the range and fail, right? But I say this to students in classes all the time. If you're going to the range or you're going in your dry fire dojo or whatever it is you're doing to practice, and I use the air quotes here emphatically, to practice what you already know how to do well, basically all you're doing is validating a skill you already own. You're not getting better at anything. In fact, you're not even practicing. Practicing would be like putting yourself in a position to learn and experiment and adapt to a particular skill that you're trying to learn, right? So I tell students all the time, like, are you in validation mode or are you in learning mode? Because if you're in validation mode is basically, we don't learn anything from repeated success. So if you're just going through the motions and just like, man, I know how to reload, I know how to draw in sub 1 second, I'm just going to make sure that I've still got this worked out. All you're doing is validating, right? Like I said, we don't learn from repeated success. Where we start to learn is from recognized or observed failure. So I've got to be able to put myself in I've got to put myself in kind of an uncomfortable situation to realize that the learning happens when I miss the grip or when I miss the target or when I'm pushing myself beyond my limit that's causing me to make mistakes, because those mistakes are the things that I'm learning from, right? That's when actual learning is happening. If you're just going through the motions and you're like, man, I'm going to go to the range and I always do build drills at 7 yards because I'm good at them. You're not in learning mode. You're in validation mode. And if you're in validation mode, guess what? You're not going to progress. And now you have sought out and found a plateau. And when you're plateaued, everybody hates to be at a plateau, but nobody knows what to do to get beyond that plateau.
Good stuff. Very good stuff.
And I find it interesting how this conversation has gone because of, again, this last course that we took, and it really made the things that I'm going to get the most dividends from in increasing my skill set as a competitor. Main thing is, I know it's real simple to say, but single hand shooting.
Mm-hmm.
It's something, especially if you're a right-hand shooter, left-handed shooting. It's so humbling, and it feels so foreign if you haven't worked on it, which I have not enough. And my scores would have been a lot higher in that course last week if I had worked on those. And I have new vision because of cataract surgery, and I have not worked on 25-yard bullseyes. I don't remember ever, because I couldn't see well enough. It was just, I would be all over the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can finally hit the black. Nearly, I can hit everything in the black, but at the same time, I need to refine that and really understand what's pulling me into that X, as opposed to just, I'm seeing better, so I'm shooting better. But if something interesting that Tom said, Eric, remember, and he really kind of simplifies it. What would he say? All shooting's easy. All you have to do is aim the gun and press the trigger without disturbing the, without moving the gun. It's that easy.
Well, his kind of funny because, and Tim probably recalls this, that he's a jokester too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Some of them are old man jokes sometimes, but they're still funny. But Aaron specifically, he says, align the sights, no move gun.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, and of course, that is the axiom. It's 100% correct. But when we've got these muscles and mental aspects that we're trying to control and get performance out of, that simple statement becomes very hard to execute on.
Right.
So, something that we didn't necessarily have in mind to talk about, but when we get to talk to high-level shooters like you, of course, we've found out, and especially from Mike Seaclander, that any high-level shooter has stage visualization down. Now, I mean, that's something, maybe not necessarily down, but it's something that everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really want to focus in on is the mental state at the moments that you're executing these skill sets can affect your performance in a huge continuum.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
And so, getting deeper into that, do you find yourself wavering in that continuum, or have you learned how in your practice regimen how to tighten that continuum up to where it's not a huge variance? Again, we're specifically talking about the mental state while you're executing.
With regards to that, right? So a lot of it is and I'm knowing kind of like who your audience is, right? So some people are competitive shooters, others may not be, but I like everybody's always after like the pursuit of something, right? Whether it's like, I'm going to pursue shooting a bill drill on demand in sub 2 seconds, right? Or I'm going to I think about like guys like Gabe White has got like his turbo pin standards and dark pin standards and light pin standards. My good friend, Scott Jedlinski of Modern Samurai Project has his black belt patch standards. I mean, we're seeing that a lot in the training realm where guys are going to classes and they want to meet or exceed these particular standards. It'd be the same. And honestly, with the same like kind of like mental bravado as me going to the national championships and wanting to pursue, finishing top 10 or finishing top 5 or finishing that national champion, like becoming that national champion. So it's a lot of it is how to overcome. Well, a lot of it is thought to be, is believed to be how to overcome mental anxiety or mental pressure. I'm going to tell you right now, here's the secret. You can't. You got to learn to embrace the pressure and the anxiety and learn how to work within that mental pressure and anxiety. So the problem is if for those that have been trying to pursue, man, I wish I could just get rid of the jitters. I wish I could get rid of first stage jitters. I wish I could get rid of, like when an RO or when that instructor is standing over my shoulder with a timer in the hand, I hear that beep and I lose my mind. Why? Well, it's because you're not putting yourself under any of that type of, you're not encouraging that type of behavior or that type of pressure or anxiety in your own practice. You've got to be able to implement that type of pressure or acclimate yourself to that level of pressure in your own practice. So most people go to the range and they never go to the range with a shot timer, or they never go to the range with a particular, I'm going to give myself, with a particular pressure pattern, so to speak. So they don't know how to inoculate themselves into that level of pressure to execute on demand, right? They go to the range and it's like, oh, well, I'm going to do a warm up first. Okay, great. So then they'll shoot 50 to 100 rounds or whatever and warm up. And then they start to put themselves under, maybe under a time constraint, or I'm just going to learn to shoot. What they need to do is change their mental mindset to holding themselves 100% accountable to the very first thing that they do on the range, right? Cold run standards are everything, because it's inoculating me to, I need to learn how to perform under pressure. There's no do-overs. There's no, oops, I missed my draw. There's no, oh crap, I didn't clear my shirt when I was going to work on stuff from appendix, or, oh man, I flubbed my reload, and then almost telling yourselves like, okay, wait a minute, do over, and then like pulling the mulligan card out. No, you don't get the opportunity to do that. If you're going to hold yourself to a higher level of standard of performance under the gun when it really counts, you best be holding yourself to that level of performance or standard or anxiety level in practice. And that's how you hold yourself accountable, like is putting yourself to that level all the time.
That's a great tip, Tim, to make sure that it sounds to me like you're saying every session, be accountable to your cold standards. And that's a way for you to induce stress. Because I'm sitting there thinking through it, and Aaron and I do cold drills when we go to the range, not all the time, but it that's very intriguing to me, because we all talk about, and this is a very common occurrence on this show, is about pressure testing. And I'm real fascinated by what you just said, because it's like, man, it's like a light bulb. It's like, okay, that's another way to add pressure to my training when I'm even by myself. That's a great tip.
Yep. What I hear when you say that is someone giving them an easy time for a half portion or a lot of the portion that they're at the range. They're getting themselves an easy time, and they're giving themselves some time to make themselves feel good. And like you said earlier, the skill sets that they're just validating. But instead of warming up, say on your like, I'll be frank, the other day I was going out to shoot and work on bulls. I'm going to warm up on 15 yards. Well, maybe I would have done better just to cold, go out to 25 and focus in and do my best and see what I can figure out that I'm needing to work on. See what the gun teaches me.
Right. Or make the 15 yard instead of, right. Anytime we hear the word like warm up or practice, or, or this is just to kind of get warmed up behind the gun. Like basically we're leading ourselves down a path of Nothing else I do until I tell myself it matters is going to matter, right?
Yeah.
So I end up
Excellent.
dismissing poor performance instead of embracing poor performance and learning from it, right? So you could do a 15-yard bull. If like your thing is to shoot B8s at 15 yards and that's your warm up, make your initial 10-round warm up, make that make that your cold standard. Like, I must shoot this on my first initial 10 rounds, right? Because that's what's going to set the precedent for the rest of the practice session.
That's excellent.
So that's a huge thing, is learning how to. It's not learning how to turn off the pressure. That's easy. Turning off the pressure is as easy as, excuse my language, but not giving a damn.
Yeah.
Right? And if you plan on giving a damn when it matters, everything needs to matter. Right? So I mean, the best way to pressure test yourself is to, like in a match, is to put yourself under those same kind of, like, to try to mimic or replicate that level of stress or anxiety, even in your own practice sessions. Now, am I doing that every single practice session for every single drill exercise I do? No. But at the same time, I have to do it and know to do it enough so that when my heart starts to beat really, really fast, or I start to get sweaty hands, or, kind of like, again, that stress inoculation starts to really creep in. It's not any place where I've been like, oh my God, what do I do? I need to learn how to calm the heart rate down. Nope. I look at it and be like, oh man, I've been here before. This is just another day in
Yeah,
the office.
exactly. You've been there before.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then one of the things that, Aaron, you were asking, like, like maybe, and maybe this is kind of what I get from your question, is also like kind of having that, like, that mental mission statement, right? So like when I walk a stage and I'm visualizing like what my stage run's going to be, or I'm looking at a particular drill or exercise and I'm thinking about, like, okay, God, here's the goal that I want to achieve. In order to achieve that goal, I need to be process focused. And so my process is 2 steps, right? My process to me is, there's 2 things that I'm 100% unequivocally focused about, and only, and that is gripping the gun and managing the sights. If I do those 2 things, regardless of how I press the trigger, regardless of how fast I get the gun out of the holster, regardless of how fast I shoot my splits, regardless of anything else, if I focus on those 2 things, just gripping the gun and managing the sights as a process, the time of whatever it is I'm trying to achieve is just there.
Mm-hmm.
The goal that I'm able to achieve becomes easy because I'm focusing on, I just need to focus on my process. Like, as long as I'm just doing that, everything else falls into play. If I start focusing on, oh crap, I got to get the gun out really, really fast. I hope I can beat this drill. Or, oh man, I can't believe I'm doing so good on this. Now I've taken myself out of my process and I'm starting to focus on a result. The moment you start to focus on a result, that's when bad things happen.
So, and I do something similar, actually almost exactly that. Right now, I do better if I try and pace myself, not outrun my, let's say, my dot management, for
Right.
instance. I don't want to outrun that. So I actually say, okay, grip the gun, pace yourself. Now, a lot of people may feel that's a wrong approach, but when it's like me, when the buzzer goes off, I tend to want to outrun my skill set. So it's just something I need to work on. But I I just find it interesting because we really can, when we're doing all these things, we've got billions and billions of muscle twitches and those myelinations, the synapses firing, everything going on between our brain and our limbs and fingers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't. Of course, there's no way we can do that because it's automatic. It's in our subconscious. But we can focus on 1 or 2 things that will focus us in the entire stage, which is kind of what I'm getting from
Right.
what you're saying there, Tim.
Yeah. If I have a conscious effort on just maintaining gripping the gun and managing the sights, everything else just like subconsciously happens
Mm-hmm.
and happens with minimal effort. And so that,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I mean minimal effort, meaning it doesn't require a lot of like bandwidth just
Mm-hmm.
to focus on those things. If I start focusing on, I have to make sure I look right here when I do my reload. And okay, now from here, I got to make sure I regrip the gun. Okay, now I need my eyes to look here and here and here. That's too many things I've got to stay focused on, right? So, like, if I just stay focused on gripping the gun and managing the sights, everything else just works out. It just works out.
Well, Tim, if I can ask further about this process, do you look at the stage and do you see what you feel is the best way to run a stage, and do you visualize that before you shoot the stage as best you
Absolutely.
can? Okay.
Absolutely. And I
And
visualize.
as many times as you can.
Sure. Oh yeah. So I mean, like I typically go into a major match, right? So like we're talking like going to nationals or Area One. I just won the Area One single stack title a couple of weeks ago in Boise, Idaho.
Awesome.
Um, but like going to a major match, I always try to go a day ahead of time. So like if I'm scheduled to compete, say Saturday and Sunday, I want to get there on Friday so that I can walk the stages to kind of to be able to better visualize what points I want to hit, where I want to be, where do I want to have the gun up ready to shoot, and I'm looking at all of those things. It's not just find all the targets and figure out some sort of plan. It's like, okay, once I figure out where all the targets can be seen from, then I'm going to break those targets down into arrays. I'm going to look at this array, and not only do I want to look at this array, I want to be able to see this array in its entirety. I should be able to close my eyes and tell you exactly what each target looks like and what each point on the target I'm visually looking at to drive the sights to that particular spot on the target. If I can't go back and do that, like with my eyes closed, I go back and I walk the stage again. And I walk the entire
Right.
stage in its entirety. I'm also looking at things like, where do I want to have my feet in this particular spot in order to see these particular targets of that array? And then where targets do I want to come in on to allow me to exit out of that last target to be able to blend that last target to the first target of the next array, right? To learn how to blend my positions together as well. Everything has a purpose, and I want to be able to cut out any sort of extra or inefficiencies of motion, of movement, of planning to just like when I get here, I want to enter here with the sole purpose of being able to shoot these things this way. And then my exit strategy, I want to enter with an exit in mind. I want to be able to get in here so that I can exit here and carry that efficiency to the next position. So whether it's be things like looking at particular spots on the ground, it's not just necessarily stopping the moment my eyes see a target. So a lot of times it's stopping only when I get to a position where I know this position allots me the capability of seeing these particular targets in this particular order, right? And so those are the things that I'm doing on my stage walkthroughs. And then, like I said, once I walk through the stage and I've got it down to where I've visualized everything, now I want to be able to come off the stage, not even looking at the stage, and completely close my eyes and like be able to visualize me either in the first person or in the third person. I'm going to get to this position. I'm going to get low. I'm going to have the gun up and I'm going to come in on the right open target. The next target in that sequence is a partial target that's got a no shoot target attached to it. It's about 12 yards away. I'm going to look at the upper third, just outside kind of AC line of that target. That's where I'm placing the sights to. I'm going to press the trigger, watch the sights lift, watch the sights return, press the trigger again, watch the sights lift. As soon as the sights lift, now my eyes are going to go to that third target and it's approximately this distance away. I'm looking at all of those things. Every single asset, every fine detail of that performance, I've shot in my head 37 to 40 times ahead of time, right?
Well, if I can add a thought to that, and this just occurred to me as we were discussing and also listening to your master class explanation. Aaron and I are well, I'll just say this. We've only shot IDPA. And I've wanted to start shooting USPSA, just hadn't done so. But one of the things I think is lost in IDPA, and you can let me know if you think I'm wrong in this. I think in the expressed reason, and I may blow up the internet and blow up the airwaves here, is that I think that's the disadvantage of IDPA is what you just described to me is the opportunity to learn how to perfect stage development
Right.
and how you're going to run it. And therefore, you learn how to do that at a much higher degree. And then you can take that to even IDPA, even though that you can't go the day before. But I'm just sitting there thinking through. It's like that's something that IDPA does not have that USPSA has, and I think in many cases they claim that it's because of we're trying to keep this more tactical, but I think
Or
it's
more novel.
yeah,
I agree with Aaron. I think it's more novel. The problem I have with IDPA, and not really a problem I have with IDPA, most IDPA matches will allow a walkthrough. You're just not allowed to like air gun the stage, right? But you're allowed to
No
look
air
through.
gun.
You're allowed a walkthrough, 2 or 3 minutes or whatever of walkthrough with the squad
sure.
to kind of determine where the targets are at, how you're going to engage them, and in what order they need to be engaged in. But what I guess the problem I have with both kind of IDPA and some of the people that play that game specifically, and a lot of the tactical community, and I hear this a lot in the tactical community all the time. Is like, well, I'm not one of these gamers. There's no walkthroughs, before a gunfight,
Oh
and
gosh.
my argument to that is complete and utter BS, because there's a walkthrough. You're walking through life, doing a stage walkthrough every single time you strap that gun on in preparation to go about your business for the day. You're making the determination. You're making the determination every single time that you untuck your shirt or whatever to place that gun in on the holster and clip it in place to walk out the door and get in the car, right? Everything you do in life is a walkthrough. As you're driving down the interstate, you should be actively thinking, if this clown in the middle lane happens to pull out in front of me, what am I going to do? How am I going to react? If I go to the grocery store and an active shooter situation decided to kick off at my Walmart and I'm in the middle of the aisle, you're playing the coulda, woulda, shoulda game, or the what if game everywhere you go. This is the reason that when we go into restaurants, where do we typically sit? We pick a table where we can put our back against the wall so we can see all of the egress in and out, right? So we can look at any particular person coming in. We can make eye contact with them, right? All of those things we're doing to be quote unquote situationally aware is nothing more than a damn walkthrough in life. You're doing the exact same thing, gaming the game of life, just like we as USPSA competitors walk through a stage to better prepare ourselves to execute what we want to within that stage. You're doing the same thing every day. Have you ever met a SWAT team or ever talked to a law enforcement officer that's been part of a SWAT team where they know they're going to go serve a no-knock warrant? Do they just go serve that no-knock warrant with 5 minutes notice? Hell no. Talk to any of them. They spend days on end in preparation. I need to know how many entrances and exits of doorways are there in that house. What is the typical construction of that house? Many SWAT teams will go get construction blueprints for that particular house from the city planning council or committee so that they can make sure that they know there's this many rooms in the house. The doorways are here. The windows are here. We want to cover any egress or ingress there is in there to make sure that we've covered all of our bases, to make sure we're prepared for the fight that it could be ahead of us. So I think it's, again, I get really, really emotional with this when people like claim that USPSA guys are the only ones that game anything. Dude, if you're going out the house unprepared, stop carrying a gun. Do me a favor. Do us all a favor. You don't deserve to carry a gun if you're going through life without walking through or playing out any potential environment that you may need that pistol for.
Well, that's
You're
a
dangerous.
beautiful representation of it, and frankly, that's what we drive home in this show all the time, is making sure that you are playing the what if game, that you're reviewing video of assault, that you are thinking about responses to particular defensive situations, so that you have a answer
Right.
rather than and I think that's a really good way of representing what stage prep is. It's very much, man, that's a great way of putting it. And those
Well,
types of individuals, we know, they just don't get it. And there may be some of our audience members that think that way. We would hope that they would listen to the discussion and take away that could help them if they
Mhm.
think about stage prep that way. Aaron, go ahead.
yeah, I just kind of want to comment further on what Tim's talking about when it comes to especially the guys that look at. I have two things that it's a dichotomy. The guys that look at it and go, "Man, this isn't tactical," or they look at it as it is too tactical. And on those two sides, also, you have the people that say this isn't training. Well, to me, yes, it's not. You're not doing tactical training. You're not. There may be tactical scenarios in IDPA. I don't think there's as much of that in USPSA. But the main thing is you are training by working very hard on getting automaticity. However you pronounce it. Sorry.
Automaticity. Yep.
Yes, basically just fully subconscious manipulation of a pistol. You're getting that down so you can make decisions in real life
Right. And here's the thing, though.
with the
Anybody
gun.
that thinks IDPA or USPSA matches are training are lying to themselves. It's not.
Absolutely.
It's not any training at all. It's not even practice. IDPA or USPSA, going to your local match every week is not practice because you're not getting any repetition. Practice requires repetition. Aaron, I see all those guitars hanging on the wall behind you,
Hmm.
right? So
Yep.
you should know what purposeful practice is, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not just picking up the guitar, like looking at a music note, right, or a sheet of music and going, okay, I think I know what that chord progression is, and then figuring it out just by looking at it, fingering those frets one time, strumming that chord progression, and being like, I got it on the first try, right?
Hmm.
No, it doesn't work that way. IDPA and
No,
USPSA is exactly the same thing. It's like being given a sheet music and it's testing your ability to look at that sheet music or look at that particular skill set that's being tested, and it's being tested right then and there. A stage in a USPSA match, you're being tested on it one time. That's
hmm.
it. You don't get multiple
Well,
27 runs on a stage to determine how good you did and take the best one out of that. You get one rep and one rep only. It's the test of the homework and the work that you're doing in your own dry fire and live fire. That's where the training is coming from. Anybody that thinks that IDP or USPSA is training, they're so full of crap to themselves. It's beyond my comprehension, right? The training is coming from the work that you're doing at home and the work you're doing at the range in preparation to be tested.
well,
IDPA is simply the test that is coming in a non-violent atmosphere to allow you to test your skill set in gun handling and pistol craft. That's it.
and as you were talking about your purposeful practice, and I, of course, practice that purposeful practice when I go to the range. I'm sure I'm not even as close to as finite and detailed or as intense about shooting as you are. But this is I brought this out because this is my practice notebook. I think I've talked about this before,
Mhm.
but all of that is practice planned before I pick up the guitar. So it's the same type of thing. And the fun thing is, I've played guitar for 33 years, and my favorite part of playing music, even though I perform and record and perform for thousands of people, this is my favorite part of music
Right.
because I love the process of getting better and playing, arpeggios and 16th notes to a metronome may be boring to some people on the outside, but since I know how valuable it is, it becomes fun to me. And which I
Right.
think the same thing would be when we're isolating getting the grip on the gun from concealment, or simply isolating getting the magazine to the mag well, or breaking things down in micro drills. It's the same thing, and it becomes fun.
Right.
Well, and one thing I would like to comment on, and I absolutely agree with you, Tim, about that it's not training. What I will tell you is that, and I'll let you comment whether you agree with this or not, um, is that the 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 opportunity to have pressure placed upon you is always valuable.
Hmm.
Um, but one of the things that I find interesting, and this is kind of why as we spoke about the various venues right now, which, let's face it, the two main venues in pistol craft is USPSA and IDPA. But when Jim Cirillo, had all of his gunfights,
Hmm.
and various studies were done, and I'm not going to sit here and cite the studies per se, or the data that they found, but they found that one of the main attributes of individuals winning actual gunfights is that they were competitive shooters.
Right.
And so I guess that's one of the main takeaways is, and Jim Cirillo, I don't think he ever um, shot at anything much beyond PPC. Maybe he got any. I'm gonna, again, I'll blow up the internet again because I don't have knowledge of what all he shot.
Yeah. He
But I
shot.
don't.
He shot USPSA or early IPSC as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad you had that information at hand. Bottom line is that I think that's the takeaway, that individuals that talk about that,
Right.
about, hey, it's either training or it's not training. So you can be in two camps in that dichotomy. But I think that the main takeaway that anybody listening to this show hears from this is that we're all about force on force. We think it's, all of us that are in this walk that really believe in it, we believe that that's one of the most crucial training venues that you can take upon yourself and self-select into. But competing in whatever game it is, and you're putting yourself under pressure, there is still tactical value, regardless if it's a tactical stage or training. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. I think I think the value there is being able to kind of pressure test skill sets that you already possess, right? So, and like I said, it's the test. It would be the same thing as, and if you guys can kind of reflect back with me to the days when we were in school, right? So the days we were in school, a lot of times you were given a pre-quiz or a pre-test about things that you may or may not already know on a subject in school, right? And that's exactly what USPSA or IDPA or any of the shooting disciplines allow us to do. Is sometimes for somebody that's new, they go and shoot the pre-test, so they go and they go and shoot a match, and they go, "Oh man, I really suck at this, and this." But it also allows them and kind of gives them the education of, "Hey, look at these things that you identified that you're bad at. Guess what? Go work on those things in training and practice, right? To myelinate better ways to do them, and then come back next month to shoot that match again to see how much you've been able to improve that particular skill." That's called practice. The match itself is called the test or the quiz of what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish, right?
That's good. That's good. Well, Tim, we've taken up a lot of your time already, and we really appreciate it. But how about just a fun last question before we let you go?
Sure.
Let's talk about why don't you give us a quick rundown of your main competition rig? I think our listeners would dig hearing about that.
Yeah. So I primarily have been competing for a long time in USPSA single stack division, and single stack's kind of that the slang term back in the day of what 1911 pistols were.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my primary gun of choice or pistol of choice, both for competition as well as just for like days at the range and everything else. So I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity since 2018 to represent Nighthawk Custom Firearms and shoot
Oh
for
yeah.
Nighthawk, to shoot for Nighthawk and be an ambassador for them. So I've got a Nighthawk kind of signature model. It's my own signature series pistol that Nighthawk has built for me. That's also available for folks to be able to purchase in both 45 and in 9mm. Nighthawk Custom 1911 is what I compete with in a Red Hill Tactical double layer Kydex outside the waistband holster. And I use a Dominate Defense inner and outer belt rig, which they also make duty belts that are amazing as well. I've been able to kind of put those in the hands or around the waist, so to speak, of both competitive shooters as law enforcement, personnel as well. So that's my holster, my belt, and the gun. And I typically shoot federal premium ammunition. So I've been very fortunate also to be able to shoot with federal and shoot for federal as a sponsored shooter with federal since 2016. So they've kind of been like my family, and my family of supporters with Red Hill Tactical, Dominate
Awesome.
Federal, Nighthawk Custom. My everyday carry pistol, I actually kind of flip between a couple of them. My primary go-to gun is a Glock 48,
Oh wow.
and I carry that appendix in a Dark Star Gear uh, hitchhiker holster, and then I don't. I'm not a big fan of like the Shield Arms 15 round magazines for any of those. I kind of
Yeah.
stick to the tried and true, just Glock 10 round magazines for those. And then
Cool.
in the summertime when I'm wearing a little bit less, especially like just the pocket of a pair of shorts or shorts or whatever. I also got an inside the waistband holster. I'm a big fan of my J frame, my Smith and Wesson J frame 5-shot revolver as well. So it's kind of an easy
Awesome.
one to be able to pick up off the nightstand and just like stick it in a pocket or be able to like put it in a holster and put it right down the pants and off I go kind of thing. So
Man, it's always really nice to have all the options. If we can carry our big gun, we'll carry it. But a lot of the times it's neither what appropriate for where we're going or what we're wearing, or
right.
frankly comfortable. Sometimes you just want to get the smallest thing you can.
Oh, exactly.
But,
Exactly.
and then, so one last thing on that: do you run dots any, or are you still mainly irons?
So I do run a dot occasionally. With single stack, you're not allowed to have a dot. That is
Hmm.
it's an iron sight division. I still love iron sights, and I teach people to shoot iron sights very, very well. That's kind of one of my big kind of fortes in my training and in my classes is teaching people how to be able to shoot the dot way more efficiently, or I'm sorry, shoot iron sights way more efficiently than they probably have ever heard it taught or ever considered shooting iron sights before. But that doesn't mean that I don't also know how to shoot the dot very, very well. I'm also a USPSA master, working on my Grand Master, and I'm just I don't shoot it enough to have achieved the GM status yet with my carry optics gun, but I've got I don't know probably 6 or 7 pistols with dots on them as well. And one of my carry guns is also a Glock 17 with a Holosun 509 on it. So
Ah,
as my
cool.
carry gun. So I've got a lot of time behind the dot as well. I personally I like the challenge in the pursuit of shooting irons as best I can, which is why I kind of fall under shooting single stack with irons as kind of that's my favorite division to shoot. But oh yeah, I've got a lot of time shooting carry optics as well and other optics guns as well. So
Well, that's cool. That's lots of fun gear, and we're Glock guys too. But I'll tell you that hearing about your Nighthawk is definitely that perked my ears for sure.
Oh yeah.
I would like a great 9mm 1911 one of these days. But well, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can reach you and how they can get get into some of your classes, etc. before we let you go.
Yeah, yeah. So the best way to reach out to me and kind of find out where my class schedule is, and it's fully up to date, is on my website, which is timherronshooting.com. Very easy. And then, like I said, it's got my entire class schedule. It's got a kind of map and pinpoint to every location that I'll be across the United States, both this year and into next year. It's also got an overview of like all my different classes that I offer, private training, custom clinics, and things like that I can also arrange, for private and small group classes as well. You can also reach me out on the Book of Faces on Facebook. I'm on all the social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, it's under Tim Herron, or also I've got my business page under Tim Herron Shooting. You'll see a pattern here. My Instagram page is also Tim Herron Shooting, and then I've also got a YouTube channel that is got 60 to 70 different videos. Some of my match videos, but more or less, more of those are all kind of how to shoot better videos. They're all instructional videos and things like that.
Awesome.
Where I break down a lot of technique and a lot of curriculum. Also, kind of for free on internet, on the internets for YouTube. So if you're not following me there, that's a great place to follow me and get a really good, free information. The only social media I'm not on is Twitter, and I just refuse. I think it's a waste of time. But yeah, I mean, like I said, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on all the big social media platforms, as well as, like I said, and I respond. I make it a habit, or I make it an effort to respond within 24 hours of anybody reaching out to me. So if you want to send me a private message through Facebook, or send me a DM on Instagram, or any of those kind of things, or even send me an email, via through the website and things like that, I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in taking a class, or maybe don't have a class, scheduled in your area, reach out to me. I'd love to be able to schedule classes in new areas all the time and all over the country. So,
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yep. I would love to come to Tulsa. So
Rayford, North Carolina.
I will
Shut up, Eric.
I'll be in Oklahoma City in October for my 3-day instructor development program.
Oh, cool.
And that's at Mead Hall Range,
Mm-hmm.
where Bill Armstrong owns that one. Eric, you said you're in South Carolina or North Carolina?
North Carolina. I'm outside of Fort Bragg.
Okay, so I know for sure I'm going to be talking to Tim Kelly of Apache Solutions tomorrow. Tim wants to host me out there next year in North Carolina, at his range next year.
Do you know roughly where?
In Oxford, which is just outside the Raleigh-Durham area, at
close
Tony
enough for
Norton's
me.
place.
Cool.
Okay, excellent.
So
well, and maybe at some point, maybe not next year because you'll already be here, but we can talk about bringing you here as well to my local area, and I'll host you.
I would absolutely love to.
Cool. Sounds great. Well, Tim, thank you very much for your time. You've definitely given us an excellent set of instructions and education that the audience and Aaron and I will definitely benefit from.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
So thank you very much for your time. I mean, it's been over a year we should have had this done.
It has. No, and I'd love to come back again too. I mean, if this is something we could expound more on some other things, given some more time. I'd love to come back.
Yeah, we've got lots of stuff we'd like to talk to you about, and we certainly ensure that we have repeat offenders. So we'd love to have you along again.
Awesome.
Multiple times.
Awesome.
So
I'd love to come back.
Well, you have a good night, and again, thanks from Aaron here. And you just be safe and have fun traveling and teaching this weekend.
I will, for sure. Thank you guys so much.
Take care, Tim.
Take
Bye.
care.